Yeah. So I was explaining what are the existing regulations which are applicable in case of scrapping and recycling of end-of-life vehicle. Um, the end-of-life vehicle, as already told, has been covered under the Water and Air Act, and the facilities are required to take consent to establish from the concerned State Pollution Control Board, as the same has been categorized under the orange category based on the potential of their emission and disposal method. And the rules, the waste which is generated from the scrapping activities are covered under the various rules of Environment Protection Act. Those are hazardous and other waste rules, solid waste management rules, e-waste management rules, plastic waste management rules, and ozone depleting substance. Can you see my next presentation? Any one of you can say just yes. Next slide. I move to next slide.
Yes, that's fine. So let's continue.
Can you see the next slide of mine?
Deepti, we would request you to turn on the presentation mode. So you could go to the slideshow and start the presentation because we'll be able to see the full screen then.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to do the full screen, but the issue is that when I'm moving to the next slide, I think the participants are saying they are not able to see.
No, we can just try the presentation mode right
Okay,
now.
fine.
So if you could do
Okay,
it.
okay, I'll do that. Fine. So, as already told, that various ministries have taken steps to promote the use of secondary material from the resource recovery and conservation, and to formalize the unorganized sector. The initiative taken is the guidelines has been prepared for environmentally sound facilities for handling, processing, and recycling of end-of-life vehicle by CPCB. The Ministry of Steel has notified the steel scrap recycling policy. Then the Transport Department of Delhi has come out with the guidelines for the scrapping of motor vehicles in Delhi, NCR. And then the recently one that has been in the draft stage is the registration and function of the vehicle scrapping facilities that has been uh, shared by Ministry of Road Transport and Highway. So, what are the salient features of the guidelines that has been prepared by CPCB? There are 4 steps which are involved in ELV management. Is that there's first step is depollution, then the next step is dismantling, then shredding, material recovery, and disposal of residue. In depollution, the major thing is that the removal of the hazardous components and substances. Basically, the fluid parts are removed. Those are batteries, fuel, other fluids, airbags, and any other part containing mercury. Then in dismantling, the parts which are reusable are removed. Those are engines, tires, bumpers, and other parts. After the depollution and dismantling, the vehicle hulk is left out. That is further shredded through, and that we call it as an automotive shredder residue, which is a heterogeneous mixture of residual of ferrous, non-ferrous material that comes in a ratio of 5 to 23% of the weight. Plastic 20 to 49, rubber 3 to 38%, textile and fiber material 4 to 45%, wood 2 to 5%, and glass 2 to 18%. And then the material recovery, what are the waste that has been generated can be recovered in a different recycling facilities. And the disposal of the residues, those which cannot be recovered or reutilized, can be has to be disposed in an environmentally sound manner in a landfill or an incinerator. So this is basically the typical processing which I explained. The major in depollution, 3 to 5% of the weight of the vehicle is being removed, and in dismantling, 5 to 35%. The car hull contains 60 to 90% weight of the vehicles, and then further the ferrous and non-ferrous part is removed, and then the light and heavy automatic shredder is used. In light, that can be further used for the energy recovery, And then in the heavy, it goes for the landfilling. Basically, currently in India, there's no shredder, so they are following a baling process. So the guidelines outline how the handling, storage, and transportation has to be done, how the depollution has to be done, what are the steps that has to be taken care, how the dismantling has to be done, and how the segregation of the parts has to be carried out. Then the shredding and separation and processing of the residue. What are the technologies that can be used for the environmentally sound recycling of the end-of-life vehicles? And what are the requirements for setting up of the end-of-life vehicle recycling facilities? Uh, and how the waste that are generated during these steps of processing of end-of-life vehicle, how they has to be managed, and what are the things that has to be taken care. So in case of end of life of vehicle, the first and foremost step is there should be a establishment of a collection and channelization mechanism for end of life vehicle from the source of its generation for recycling and recovery of the end of life vehicle parts in an environmentally sound manner. It should be in a such manner that it should cover a maximum coverage area for collection, and it is advisable to go for a 50-kilometer radius around for a take back facility. And when the collection and of the ELV has to be done, how it has to be handled, stored, and transported for further processing. These are the steps that has been specified, that it should be stored in a way that their value and is not sorry, the material value should not be wasted, and it should be protected from the environment. It should be stored in a dry area where there's no water logging or water. For that, there should be an impermeable surface with such as concrete flooring has to be provided, and provision for spillage collection has to be given. Apart from that, it should not be the boundary of the premises where the ELV has to be dismantling has to be carried out, and it should not be stored until the fluid parts, that is the fuel, oil, antifreeze, and other fluids are completely drained out and has been removed. Further, the dismantling of the spare parts, including, has to be stored on the impermeable surface area. There should be a separate area designated for each part of area of the waste that has been material that has been taken care, removed from the depollution or dismantling activity. And records of each and everything has to be maintained with regard to the vehicle, the record of the vehicle, and the material that has been removed from that end of life of vehicle. So this is the depollution activity that has to be done, and what are the things that has to be done. Steps has also been given. What are the things that has to be taken care when you are doing depollution? What are the things that has to be removed first, and then what has to be done in the second stage and in the third stage. So the first step is to remove the battery, remove the fuel, oil, filter, coolant, brake fuel, power steering caps, and after that you have to remove the wheels and tires, and there should be a proper lifting on the depollution frame. Here you can see A, B has been written, which means the activities which has to be done first has to be mentioned as A, and in the B means that step has to be taken after the other one. For instance, I talk about in case you are doing after removing the parts, as mentioned before, lifting the vehicle, you have, when you are lifting it on the depollution frame, the degas air conditioning activity has to be done first, and then the coolant has to be removed and brake fluid has to be removed. So these steps has been specified, what are the things that to be taken care, and the sequence that has to be followed in case of depollution. So once the vehicle has been depolluted, the next step is to dismantle. Basically, in some cases, depollution and dismantling they are considered to be as a one part, and the things which are to be taken care when you are doing dismantling is that the engines, tires, bumpers, that should be removed safely, and those who have the potential for reuse, they can be reused, or further, if it has to be sent for the recycling to the recyclers, that has to be recorded and well maintained. Inventory has to be prepared. because this is further required to be compliance with the rules which I'm going to cover in my next slide. Then the dismantling has to be done manual, where the vehicle size is smaller, and in case of large vehicles, the mechanized system can be used. Now, the car hulk, which is basically consists of the 60-90% of the vehicle weight, that has to be for getting the good quality of the scrap, that has to be preferably shredded. In shredding, we get four fraction. One is the ferrous metal, non-ferrous metal, heavy shredder residue, and light fraction. The ferrous metal is basically you can use a technology of magnetic separator. In case of a non-ferrous, you can use a mechanical separation or eddy current. And similarly, the lighter fraction can be further utilized for energy recovery, and the heavy shredder residue can be sent to the landfilling facilities. So these are the technologies that has been mentioned, and what technologies can be used for getting what kind of fraction, that has been further elaborated in the guidelines. Now the next and the important part, whatever the waste, because it is known to contain most of the various hazardous material. The major portion contains the hazardous material from the end of life scrapping. So whatever the used oil, waste oil, transmission oils, those are covered under the hazardous waste regulations and are required to be managed as per the rules, which means that first thing is that authorization has to be taken for management of hazardous and other waste. In fact, the e-waste, solid waste, and plastic waste, if you are doing collection, then you are offering for sale and sending it to the authorized recycler, you have to take an authorization from the State Pollution Control Board for management of that category of waste. Now, if I go to hazardous waste, things which has to be kept in mind, that when you are removing certain part or a fluid, that has to be stored in a container, or it should be stored in such a place that should be a demarcated separately. Dedicated storage area should be for there with the proper labeling, how the labeling has to be done. This is the labeling that has been given in the hazardous waste rules format that has to be complied with. You have to mention what is the category, what was the total quantity. Suppose I talk about the used oil, how much quantity has been stored in the container, what is the date of the storage. You have to mention it properly, label it hazardous waste, and to whom you are sending it. That information has to be given along with the contact person, and in case of any mishandling or any accident take place while the waste is being transported, what are the emergency steps has to be taken care, that has to be mentioned in the form of a trem card to the transporter. Besides this, when you are transferring this waste to the third party for further recycling, a manifest system has to be adopted. That has been further elaborated in the hazardous waste rules, which says that there are to be maintained 7 copies. Different copies have given different colors, and they have a different significance. For instance, if I talk about the copy 1, the sender who is sending the waste, like suppose while doing an end of life vehicle, you are generating a used oil, then you have to send a copy, that information in a form 10, which gives about the quantity, the type, and to whom you are sending it. That format you have to send it to your concerned State Pollution Control Board, and the remaining copy, that is the 6 copies, has to be sent to the transporter who is carrying that waste. And when the transporter hand over the waste to the receiver, that is the authorized recycler who is going to further processes this waste, used oil, he has to retain 1 copy and give 1 copy signed back to the transporter. And after treating it, the used oil, they have to send the 1 copy to the State Pollution Control Board. And the one of the important point is that copy 7, that has to be taken care when suppose an instant one unit is located in one state, and it has to send that waste to other state for recycling. So the copy 7 is important in that case. That has to be sent to both the state pollution control board in case of an interstate movement of that particular hazardous waste. So these are some of the things that has to be taken care. The next thing is that whatever the records, to whom you are sending the waste, how much quantity has been sent over, that has to be submitted in the form of annual returns to the State Pollution Control Board. There are different lines for submission of the annual returns under various rules. The hazardous and e-waste rules, the information has to be submitted by 30th June of every financial year, and in case of a solid and plastic waste rule, that has to be submitted by 30th April of every financial year. Besides this, records has to be maintained for inspection. If any regulatory bodies comes for inspection, that information has to be saved and shown how you are managing the information and to whom you are sending it. Further, in case of hazardous waste, whensoever you are handing over the waste to the authorized recycler, a passbook is issued to that particular recycler. You have to make an entry into that passbook, which gives a proof that you have sent that particular category of waste to that particular recyclers. Information of your ELB facility along with the quantity and duly stamped has to be ensured. This is one of the key steps that has to be ensured when you are handing over to some third party for further recycling. So these were some of the things that has to be taken care. In case of refrigerant gases which are being generated from the vehicle air conditioning systems, that has to be collected properly and has to be further disposed of or recycled in the authorized facility that has been authorized by the central government. In this case, Ministry of Environment Forest, they are the nodal agency which is dealing with the registration of the ozone depleting substances. However, you may further approach your state pollution control board for getting this information where the refrigerant gases can be disposed of or can be recycled. Next one, which is actually applicable in case of only Delhi NCR. The Delhi government has come out with the guidelines. Basically, there was one of the direction from the National Green Tribunal, where they have directed that the petrol vehicles of 15 years age and diesel vehicle of 10 years age has to be declared as an end of life of vehicle and has to be sent to the authorized scrapping centers for further depollution dismantling. So with this, they have come out with the guidelines in 2018, and the guidelines basically defines various applicable terms that has been related to end of life vehicle scrapping, and how the licensing procedures, what is the validity, who has got the right of inspection, what procedure has to be followed for scrapping, and then what is the minimum requirement for scrapping yard, and what are the penalties in case of violation is observed. So these are the things that has been further elaborated in those guidelines, which I am further going to touch in my further Ministry of this MOT guidelines, because those are more or less similar. There are some parts which are different. When I'll be discussing those, I'll be mentioning there. The next one is steel scrap recycling policy. So with the objective to promote and carry out the ferrous scrap activity in a scientific manner, the Ministry of Steel has come out with a steel scrap recycling policy in November 2019. Basically, there all type of scrap has been covered, which are generated from end of life of products, and that includes also end of life vehicle also. These guidelines are more or less similar and define the procedures, how the scrapping has to be done. The role of each stakeholder has also been elaborated. Excuse me.
Deepti, are you okay?
Yeah, little bit.
Okay, Deepti, no, I've just sort of come on board just to make sure you're okay. I don't know if you've been following the chat. There has been issues with your presentation. It hasn't been moving along. So, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, sorry. And I'm aware of time now.
I think Susanna is having my presentation. She can, if she can do slideshow, because I am able to do the slideshow, but the thing is that when we do slideshow, there's some issues also.
Yes, we can see that there is an
Can
issue.
Susanna help in this regard? I think the slideshow part.
Yeah, so what we will do is we'll make the slideshow available on our websites later on today. We haven't been able to upload them as such yet. I'm aware of time, so I'm just worried because we've got some questions coming in, and I don't know, what would you like to do? Would you like to finish your presentation, or would you like to go straight to some questions?
It's up to you, because I have left out with my what are the salient features of the draft MOT guidelines, the notification which has come.
Okay, so quite important. Let's put this to the panel, shall we? To everybody's in the room, you know, because people are trying to follow this. They're finding it maybe difficult, some maybe not, because of the presentation. So I'm just going to ask this question to people. Are we happy for it to go on? We're going to be going over time, and then have the questions, or would you like to go straight to some questions from what you've been hearing from Deepti? You know, just a quick sort of your opinion would be great. I'm getting nothing at the moment to sort of say either one way or the other. Hang on. Some people are asking for questions.
I think people are asking for the question. It's up to you how you want to.
Okay, I think you're doing amazingly well, especially when you're doing these presentations and the first thing that happens is a technical issue and you have to sort of adjust. So you are working under a lot of pressure. So I think let's go. Yeah, people are a bit worried about the time. So let's go to some questions. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine with me. I'll rather suggest it's up to you. Let's take other speakers also, and if the time permits, then we can discuss about the MOT, because now the MOT draft notification has been left.
Okay, well, hopefully in these questions, which we'll go over very quickly, those issues might be raised. And just remember, everybody out there on in the virtual room as such, that Deepti will be around throughout the conference, so you can go and approach her directly if you need to know some things more, and we will be putting the presentation and a recording online pretty soon, so you can catch up if you really want to find out the details of what's going on. So let's ask the first question, Deepti. How booming has vehicle recycling been in India, and what are the major targets that the country must establish for itself? There's been two votes for that.
See, if we talk about the targets, it is too early to decide about the targets, because you can see that various ministries have come out with the policies, and the first step is to how we should roll this scrapping. It has been, if we talk about the policies and the guidelines, it's not more than 2 years or 3 years the government has come. And still the facilities, if we talk again about how the number of the facilities, they are very limited. There's only currently one is working towards end of life of vehicle, and I'm pretty sure that they are still struggling with the quantity of getting the end of life. So get at this point of time, setting up of the target as compared to the international standards, I think won't be appropriate. But yes, down the line, if we talk about 5 or 6 years, we will be in a position how the steel scrap or how the scrapping is going to take place. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think you know we need time for things to develop and be put into place to sort of be able to have
Yes.
you know, to be able to sort of assess this properly and to see where in which direction it's going. The next question, I'm going to do this very quickly. This is from Ashish Bagra. I hope I got the name pronounced properly. From Zero. My question is: CPCB working towards reducing the exorbitant and prohibitive costs of landfill authorised companies, especially for ASR. What's your opinion on that? That's
Yes,
the top question if you go into Q&A.
Yes, but see, currently commenting on that ASR in terms of India won't be, correct, because trading facility in India. As similarly, you can see if you talk about the worldwide practice, still people are working toward getting how to manage or getting good quality of ASR, like the larger fraction and bigger fraction. So how we further can reduce and minimize it going into the landfill. So in terms of Indian perspective, we need to study how we can work towards its reduction in terms of its disposal, because there has been studies conducted out which talks that the lighter fractions can be easily used for the energy recovery, whereas the higher portion, if has to be somehow a minimum quantity, goes for the landfill facility.
Okay. And this is going to be the final question because I'm aware of time. And thank you everyone for sending in more questions. And as I said, please try to find Deepti later to ask these questions direct to her. But this is one that's I think is a good question. What is the public's perception of ELV recycling in India? And if it can be improved, what needs to be done to do so? And that's from Neil Jocelyn in the UK.
See, I couldn't complete my presentation, but in my presentation, the way forward and the issue which I have also highlighted is like awareness. People are not that much aware about these. Only the players which are into this field, they know about it. And who are working in the regulation part and all, we know about it. But the public participation is not that much because they are not aware. Awareness has to be created. That is the major issue and challenge. We have to educate the public about how ELV can be recycled and how where their role has come. Their role has to be mentioned over there, and how they can contribute in this part. So that is one of the key thing we have to look upon.
Okay, and I'm glad that question sort of helped you sort of, as you said, you couldn't complete your whole presentation, so there's something that you might have been using in your conclusions. That's great.